All right, should be live. Let me go on my YouTube on my phone to make sure.
Perfect.
There it is. All right.
Nice.
Make sure the comments will show up for me too.
That's the one thing with this was the comments and like changing things, banners you wanted to do. That was some work, but otherwise I like this platform.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Around the 412. We are part of AllSteelers.com and proudly presented by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. Follow them at Crowworthy on Twitter. Visit Crowworthy.com, Pittsburgh City page for podcasts like this one, blogs, and much more. I am Smitty. With me, as always, is not Tyler, actually. With me tonight, I got two very special guests, though. We got Jake Shavenk, we got Tyler Fornes, both of the NFL draft community. We're going to talk some things, Senior Bowl, as that was last week. And as it just so happens, fans of two other NFC North teams who the Steelers are going to be visiting next year. So let's talk about that. But first and foremost, why don't you guys introduce yourself, tell people where they can find your content and what you do.
Go for it, Tyler.
All right. Well, my name is Tyler Fornes. You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealForno.
I'm on the banner.
Yeah, absolutely. The banner is legit. You can find most of my NFL draft work at Climbing the Pocket. You may remember Climbing the Pocket. Jordan Reed started the page with a couple other Vikings guys. Jordan is fantastic. And you can find some of it at Blue Chip Scouting as well. And then if you're a pro wrestling fan, I do occasional work for Voices of Wrestling, and we just finished our 2020 Match of the Year poll, which is the most comprehensive poll in all of wrestling media. So you can find me doing all kinds of stuff, and I'm obsessed with Discord. So hit me up and bury me for something. I don't care.
Love it. All right, Jake.
Yeah, I'm Jake Shavenk. You can find me at Jake NFL Draft, like this lovely banner says there. You mostly do NFL draft work for NFL Mocks, which is part of Fansided. Also doing a Packers podcast recently.
Saw that.
Started up called The Gold Zone with a couple guys. It's been a lot of fun so far. Obviously, we started at just the right time when they lost in the NFC Championship game, but it's fine. But yeah, it's been fun, and I'm also pretty heavy in the Discord stuff too as well. So yeah.
You know what? I realized Jake has actually been on this show a couple of times, so people might remember him, going back to last year's draft.
True.
He did a mock draft with us as well then. Actually, a couple of different mock drafts because we decided to do that one super hectic one where we gave ourselves like 90 seconds to make each pick. Didn't know each other's picks beforehand. It was just ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun. But it's got to be like a top 5 accomplishment for me. I spelled your last name right on that ticker without looking, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Wait. Oh no! Is
it not right?
There's a C before the K. Oh, he congratulated himself.
Oh my
He congratulated himself real quick there.
Wait. There's a what?
There's a C before the K.
Hold on.
You almost had it, man.
Now I'm upset.
So close. So close.
All right, now look at it.
Listen, it happens. Trust me. I'm no stranger to
How
it.
are we looking now?
Looking great.
Right.
Beautiful.
All right. But let's talk about this. All right. So first and foremost, let's just open up with some initial thoughts going into last week's Senior Bowl. I mean, what were you guys looking for as far as like the teams that you guys, because Jake, I know you cover some other teams as opposed to like you being a fan of, but what were you specifically looking for last week for your teams?
I mean, obviously offensive line was a big key for Packers and Colts coming in. And I think obviously, you're going to see potentially Corey Linsley out of the picture in Green Bay. There are a lot of moving parts on that O-line, which is nice. So obviously looking for someone who's versatile down there. Obviously the Colts as well. Obviously now Costanzo's out. No idea if they're going to move Nelson over or not. So there's a lot of shuffling that could go on there too. So definitely looking at O-line and thought there were a couple of guys who definitely impressed early. I think Dylan Radins was the big one, honestly, getting a lot of reps at tackle and guard. I thought did really well. I know the draft community's been a little iffy on him, especially from the 2019 tape. We didn't get to see a lot, obviously, in 2020, but he looked improved.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. From an offensive line standpoint, I mean, obviously, the Steelers right there. I don't know how much tapped into you guys are in with the Steelers, but, like, that's the big talk is probably going tackle, pick 24, assuming like somebody doesn't, slide to them. But, the top 5 tackles, they're all going to be in play, I think, for the Steelers. So I really, that was the big thing I was looking at was offensive line. And I agree with you. Another guy that I thought like had a nice week was Deontay Smith of ECU. But I'm curious to see, what does that do for his draft stock? A guy that really wasn't on my radar. Now all of a sudden, like, where do you guys have a guy like that? Is he still like a day 3 guy? Has he jumped into day 2?
Like Deontay Smith was my favorite watch in Mobile. One of the things that really intrigued me was he's an athletic specimen. He obviously has about a 7-foot wingspan. He's got 35.5-inch arms. Like, he's got all the measurables. And the one thing that was really holding him back from a lot of people talking about him during the initial part of the process, his weight going into this year was 274 at offensive tackle.
Wow.
He went into Mobile. He weighed in at a good 290, and no, it was 294. Like, it was good weight. It wasn't like Cam Davis at the combine last year, who was a pencil thin and put on 15 pounds of fat. No, it added 20 pounds of good bulk, and he looked every bit as good as I was hoping he would. Yeah, he was really quick with his feet. That initial punch was working. He wasn't letting guys beat him with power or speed, which a lot of guys who have that slender build, you worry about a solid anchor, and it really wasn't an issue with him. I could see him with this tackle class. He's probably going to end up going round 3, maybe early round 4, because it is very deep. There's a lot of really good talent, but somebody like a zone blocking scheme, like San Francisco 49ers, if they decide that they want to get a tackle, that's a guy who could go round 2. But I think when you get into those day 2 guys, it's going to be based on, hey, who do I prefer for a scheme? Are they going to want a more power guy? Or are they going to want a better athlete? And if you say athlete, Deontay Smith's going to be very high on your board.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, kind of switching gears, I do want to come back to winners and losers, because obviously he was a clear winner at the Senior Bowl. But Tyler, for you as a Vikings fan, who were you looking at this week? And I know one of the names you're going to say at wide receiver, but I'll just let you take it from there. Who were you looking at this week? Who impressed you? All that good stuff.
One of the big things I was looking at from a Vikings perspective, I was looking at the one-on-ones. We desperately need help on both sides of the ball with the trenches. Obviously, Danielle Hunter having that neck injury and being out all season really hurt. Michael Pierce opting out was a big loss for how Mike Zimmer likes to run his defense. We were essentially running scrubs for the last half of the year, guys who were fringe roster worthy. So I wanted to take a look and see how some of these defensive linemen, because not all of them are going to be going super high. We saw some really good players. The defensive tackle class is awfully weak, but Levi Nuzarike, Osa, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. The UCLA kid is dominant. But one of the big things I always look for, oddly enough, I like watching the running backs. I like watching them go in pass protection and try and take down these linebackers. A lot of these linebackers this year were athletes. You had your Baron Browning, Jabril Cox, but watching these guys go after it and pass block and try and take down these guys. Like Kylan Hill's one of my favorite players in this draft. He had a rep where he just absolutely annihilated the linebacker. And Michael Carter and Khalil Herbert had pancakes on Tough Borland, who had an awful week. So I was just kind of looking at guys who stand out, guys who were going to rise up and go against live competition for the first time in a while because they opted out, or guys who were from lower levels showing that they can compete and they're just as talented as these other players from Blue Bloods.
Yeah. So a guy that, just based off that statement right there, that's a good transition. How in the world do you say that offensive lineman's name from Wisconsin Whitewater? Quinn, what is his last name? Is that okay? It's as simple as that. I was thinking it's like some complex last name they didn't mispronounce. But you talk about winners of the week. He had a phenomenal week. I mean, that one rep that he had against Patrick Jones, who was a very good player from Pitt. I mean, and then he breaks a bone in his hand. Screw it, I'm still playing.
That's Culver's born and bred, baby.
But yeah, so he had a phenomenal week. And, I don't know, we're talking about offensive line a lot, when we talk about the 3 teams that we're talking about here. Where do you see a guy like that slotting in now? Because, again, this is another guy kind of, off the map. And where does he come into play now for you?
I mean, I think when you look at a guy like that, and when he plays, like you're looking at center guard versatility there, I mean, With the interior class in as much flux as it was over the week, I think you look at two guys who lost, and I want to get ahead of everything, but Trey Smith and Deontay Brown, who I think had rougher weeks in many eyes. You look at minors who, we've seen small school guys really rise to the occasion in previous Senior Bowls, and to say that he's, I think it's pretty clear to say he's locked in a day two. It's just dependent on scheme, dependent on need, and he's more of a tone setter. He's going to be, a team that, and I think somebody brought it up earlier today, is a Ryan Jensen comp from Tampa Bay. Topical with the Super Bowl week. I forget who it was. I wish I would shout them out, but a guy who just sets the tone from the first snap all throughout the fourth quarter. And I think he's going to attract so much attention in the draft because of that.
He's nasty. But you love watching guys like that. I do want to address one thing in the comments because I don't want to ignore the people that are in here. Devin Stubbs, who is on the YouTube page, said, "I'd bet my home the Steelers draft linebacker." I mean, if you know about the Steelers, they're always taking linebackers. So he said, "So who are the good linebackers?" I know Tyler mentioned Baron Browning. There were some other linebackers there, though. From a linebacker perspective, what did you think of? I think that we kind of already touched on it, not necessarily being the strongest group there. But as far as the Senior Bowl week went, winners and losers at that position, I think that you already touched on, Tyler. Tough Borland having a pretty bad week. But what did you see from the linebackers in general?
Honestly, Tough Borland probably had the worst Senior Bowl week of anyone. Baron Browning is obviously a quick twitch athlete. He's got a lot of potential. He's probably going to play more of an Anthony Barr role at the next level. He's going to be that off-ball 4-3 linebacker, yet maybe slide in to be a middle linebacker in 3-4. You could make him a pass rusher, but I think he'd be better suited to not be that guy. And I think the guy who had one of the best weeks in Mobile was Jabril Cox. The NDSU transfer, went to LSU. LSU had a down year, didn't get a lot of hype. But he had some reps where he was just annihilating people, and he showed that he was every bit the athlete that you thought he could be when you watch his tape. And he was absolutely fantastic. A little bit of a diversion because I know this is a Steelers podcast. One guy you guys need to watch for round one, Azeez Ojulari. For some reason, he just screams Steelers edge, and especially with uncertainty with Bud Dupree and that knee, it's something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, you know what? All of a sudden, we're seeing and I think the Steeler fans have to start taking it seriously, is a lot of linebacker hype in round one because people are starting to mock them for Zaven Collins out of Tulsa, and it's not just local guys. We're talking about national media members mocking them for a linebacker in round one, and I think that with all the Steelers' needs, you can't write off many positions being drafted. We have no idea where this team is going to go in round one. It could be any position really, but I do want to talk about too the quarterbacks that were at the Senior Bowl, because I wasn't too impressed with the class that was there on paper. Obviously, Mac Jones, the jury's out on him as a round one quarterback, maybe a fringe guy day one, top of day two. I don't know. Kyle Trask, we unfortunately didn't get to really see. Kellen Mond, is an intriguing prospect. Felipe Franks has a great arm. Same to be said about Jamie Newman, who we didn't get to see play in the college football season because he opted out, but maybe there's some potential there. What did you guys make of the guys that were at the Senior Bowl?
Well, I think, it was one of those weird years where it felt like a quarterback didn't steal the show early and then throughout that week, where I felt like it was just more of a lot of guys just competing to get noticed. Again, obviously when you go there live, everybody's looking for that live arm. And when you had last year, when you had Jordan Love and Justin Herbert, it's a little bit unfair to compare this group to that group. But when you looked at what Mon did a lot of during reps and one-on-ones, and then, the third quarter he had in the game, unfortunately, obviously you looked at inconsistencies with him, and that game was kind of a microcosm of what he's been at Texas A&M, right? Is that inconsistency, saw the first quarter, everything was out of sync. Third quarter, he found it. So as far as he goes, he looked like the most impressive. He stood out more and obviously had deeper valleys. Obviously, Mac Jones is never going to wow people because they're looking for those highlight reel throws, the arm strength throws, push into tight windows. Jones did a little bit of that in the team drills. But with Jones, you're going to look at a guy who's winning with his timing, his anticipation, accuracy, the way he moves in the pocket. I think that's the type of things you're looking for with him. So when you saw this week with the quarterbacks, you didn't see that real flashiness to anybody.
Right. Tyler?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same boat. Honestly, Mac Jones improved his draft stock just by being there, competing, and he did everything to accentuate his skill set. Matt Rule, you could tell, was just infatuated with him as a player and as just a person. So that'll be interesting. I don't think I have a third round grade on Mac Jones. I think he can really throw a great deep ball, but he just, you can't really get a great sense for him. How much of it was scheme? How much of it was all this ridiculous talent around him? I think watching the offense, he got a chance to basically throw practice throws half the time. So I'm not sold on him, but honestly, he was the best one. Like, ESPN kept trying to make Ian Book and Sam Ehlinger a thing. I think they're backup caliber.
Yeah, we didn't even bring up them yet. So
yeah, Jamie Newman looked rusty beyond belief, and he just validated everything I saw from his 2019 film. He's got all the traits, but he can't put it together. Kellen Mond is 100% traits. Very inconsistent, but he has every tool that you would want. Somebody's going to convince themselves to take him day 2, especially with the good Senior Bowl week. And then Felipe Franks, Smitty, you said it right. He's all arm. I watched him as the starting quarterback for Florida for 3 years.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah, so
he's got a cannon, and he will make wow throws where it's just like, holy shit, did he really make that? And then the next play, he'll throw like a floater, and it'll be intercepted. He's not mentally there to be a great quarterback. He's got all the arm talent, but nothing else. So it was really disappointing that we didn't have a better class, kind of like we did last year with Love, Herbert. Like we had a really good class last year, and then this year was just kind of
Jalen Hurts was there too last year.
It was Hurts. He was the third one.
Yeah. But okay, so you're a Florida fan, Tyler, but I know you're able to put that bias aside. What do you have? So you said a third round grade on Mac Jones. Where do you stand on Kyle Trask?
I haven't done my final eval on him. Going into the year, I had him as a mid to late third. I thought if he could continue to progress with a lot of those little things that he struggled with, some of the processing, some of the panicking in the pocket, I thought he could potentially be a first-round quarterback for me. I think he's probably going to settle in at that QB5 pretty comfortably, probably a fringe second, third-round player. I really like what he brings to the table. He is a limited athlete, but he's not incapable. You saw in the SEC title game that Dan Mullen decided this was a Tim Tebow offense, so we're just going to run Kyle Trask. Like, he can do some of those things, but it's not his forte. Yeah, he's like a slightly more mobile Phillip Rivers in that aspect. He can do some boots. He can scramble a little bit, but it's not going to be something you want him to do. You don't want him to create outside of structure. Something I keep hearing, it's playmakers versus facilitators. He's a facilitator, and he's a really good one, but he's not going to be for everyone. I think 2 offenses that I can see that he could really thrive in: Pittsburgh, New Orleans. Pocket passing, vertical offense, throw the ball down the field, do a lot of the little short game, utilize space. I think he could be successful, but it's going to be based on where he lands. Because if he lands like I don't know, like anywhere else, I worry about him being a successful NFL quarterback.
Tyler's going
right
now.
No.
No, but yeah, let's hope it's New Orleans. But other than that, so I want to move on to talk. Oh wait, I forgot. I got to bring up one linebacker to you guys. I was asked to bring up this guy specifically, who I really didn't notice much. Justin Hilliard out of Ohio State, the linebacker. I don't know what you guys make of him. I know that he's kind of all over the map in the draft community. Like, for example, when I'm doing mock drafts, I've seen him go in like round 2, and I've seen him go in like round 6.
Yeah, that's weird. I haven't seen round 2. That's interesting. But yeah, I thought obviously Borland had a rough week. I thought Hilliard did fine. I don't think, we're looking at a prospect on Browning's level. But I think he's a solid enough athlete where you can ask him to cover in space. I thought he did fine in coverage against the backs. Remember, there was a specific wheel route run, I think, in a one-on-ones against one of the backs. He stood step for step with him in his hip pocket. I thought it was impressive. I think you're going to ask him to do a lot of things like blitz and sub packages and operate in space more as a will. But I think, day 3 is probably his best area to draft, and probably round 5, round 6. But I think he's going to be able to contribute. Again, it's going to be, as we talked about with a lot of these guys, is putting it all together with the mental part of the game on the field and really, diagnosing things for him. I think the athletic traits are there.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Jake. I didn't think he stood out at all, and that's both good and bad. I don't think he did anything super spectacular. I also didn't think he cratered his draft stock. He also, if I remember correctly, was basically the fourth linebacker for the Ohio State defense behind Werner, Browning, and Borland.
So yeah, you had the three at the Senior Bowl and then Pete Werner as well. So
Yeah.
So he's probably going to be a round 4 player. Somebody who doesn't have a ton of production, but you still think he can be a really good player. He's going to start with special teams, and eventually, hopefully, you're going to get him to be a starter. He just didn't tell me anything where I need to take this guy day 2.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even I forgot about bringing that up. I wanted to bring that up when we were talking about linebackers, but I remember one of our listeners wanted to bring him up specifically. Now, I wanted to talk about receivers here. I know Tyler is super excited about one of the receivers that was down there at Senior Bowl. I know that you wish you were there in person to watch this guy, Dwayne Eskridge, the receiver out of Western Michigan. So I'm just going to give you the floor, and you can talk about this guy a little bit.
I had really not watched Dwayne Eskridge until a couple years ago, and I was talking to Jordan Reed. I saw him rave about him, like, hey, what games do I need to watch? I'm going to watch this guy. And he told me, I think it was Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, and Ball State. I'm like, okay. So I turned on the tape, and I thought I was watching, like, Alabama tape because he was just burning people. His speed is so evident the second you turn on the tape, and he's got fluid hips. He can run crisp routes. Yeah, he's got the ability that kind of like Tyreek Hill has, where he's just balls to the wall for 15 yards and he can just stop. He's got that. He's got return ability. He's got really good hands, great body control in the air, contested catches. I just fell in love with the kid. And then he goes to Mobile. There were questions. Hey, he plays in the MAC. The MAC's not very good. They play Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Of course, you can blow by Akron, but can you blow by these guys? And then he did. And he showed everybody that what you saw on tape is what you're going to get with Eskridge. And I almost have a first-round grade on Eskridge. I love him probably more than almost everybody. I think he can be he's going to be a developmental guy first. He's only 5'9", but he made Bruce Feldman's freaks list. He benches 350 and squats 505 at 5'9", 190. Yeah, it's ridiculous. If he ends up with a team that understands how to use a player like that early on, while he develops a full route tree, while he develops more nuances in his game, I think we could talk about Eskridge as a Pro Bowl caliber player within 3 years.
Wow. Okay, so I know where you have him, but I feel like you also seem to have a pretty good sense of where like the draft community as a whole feels about him. Mm-hmm. Where do you think he ends up going?
I think after coming out and owning Senior Bowl week, as far as the receiver one-on-ones, I think he's probably going in the second round. I think if you have a team like Kansas City who just falls in love with speed, and you've got your Waddle, Tony, if they're both gone,
good Lord,
I could totally see a team like that just sneaking into round 1 and wanting to grab him. But he's probably going to go in that 50 range. And I think that's fair value, especially with this receiver class. This receiver class wasn't strong. You could really talk about him being a first-round guy because you're going to have Tylan Wallace, who's we were talking about as a first-rounder before an ACL injury last year. And he's going to go round 3 or 4 just because of the depth of this class. Like Vikings got Stephon Diggs in that great receiver class in 2015 in the 5th round. Don't be surprised if you find another Stephon Diggs type player in day 3, just because there's so many good players.
Happens every year. Jake, where are you at with Eskridge?
Oh my gosh. I mean, when you look at the Senior Bowl practice reps, man, he looks like Greg Jennings before the catch and Randall Cobb after it. And that's where my brain immediately went when I saw him.
I love you just immediately go to Packers receivers.
I mean,
and Western Michigan, great. Greg
Jennings. Exactly. Yeah. So that was the thing too. It was like, oh yeah, he looks like Jennings. That's just an easy thing but like, man, how his release game. Oh my gosh. I know there's a rep. I think it was against Bynum from Cal, I want to say.
Yep.
Where he just the release he got off the line, got Bynum to turn his shoulder vertically to the outside and just snapped off so quickly. Got the hand in his shoulder pad immediately over the middle. Oh, just incredible. could watch it on repeat. I mean, this might be a player I'm harping the Packers at 29. Just do it. Just do it. Like, it'd be hard not to do. I mean, definitely at 61.
They might trade up and take a quarterback, though.
It's true. It's true. Don't worry. Our podcast is already driving the Kellen Mond to Green Bay train on day 3, so don't worry.
No, but okay. So looking at that same position, though, other receivers that might have stood out to you, who else, won the week or lost the week for you at the wide receiver position?
For me, it starts and ends with Shi Smith out of South Carolina. Coming in, he's like 5'10", $195. He didn't get a lot of publicity, and he wasn't playing with great quarterbacks. Never really broke 800 yards in a season. So I can just hear the fantasy community talking about dominator rating and all this stuff, telling him he's not going to be a good player. But he came in and really did a great job in one-on-ones. Very quick feet, smooth releases, good routes, and he caught almost everything thrown to him. And I think that I was really impressed. He might have boosted his stock up into the late day 3 range, maybe those conditional picks. But I think he's the guy who's going to be a 4th round pick. He's going to come in. He's going to be a great slot receiver for a decade. And somebody's going to get really good value taking a guy like Shi Smith.
I was curious to see if you brought up Kadarius Toney, obviously being a Florida fan. I know that a lot of people have him, back end of round 1. Do you still think, even after Senior Bowl week, that's probably where he's going to go?
Oh, absolutely. He had a couple drops Senior Bowl week, but that's very uncharacteristic of him. He has like a drop percentage of 1.5%, and that's on the same level as the best in the league. Fitzgerald, Hopkins, Diggs, they're all in that 1 to 2% range of drops. So I think he's going to go back into round 1, and I think he showed everything that you were expecting him to show. So I don't have him as a big winner. He just did what he needed to do and did a really good job of it. The biggest issue with Toney, injuries. Yeah. He kept getting hurt at Florida. And then they kind of were a little hesitant to use him. But they also had 4 receivers go from Florida last year. 3 of them got drafted. 1 of them made the Seahawks. And they all played really good football. So when you have 4 receivers go to the NFL, now this year, you're going to have Toney, Trevon Grimes, Kyle Pitts. You're going to have 7 pass catchers in 2 years make the NFL. It's okay if he didn't have a lot of stats.
Right. Jake, for you at the wide receiver position?
Oh, I mean, I think just briefly, I think bringing up Dez Fitzpatrick is a good idea. I think just as a guy who you can ask to win on these short, quick routes over the middle of the field, a lot of West Coast teams are going to love that. And they're going to love his size too at 6'2", 210. So I definitely want to bring him up because I thought he boosted his stock quite a bit. And I think you saw it carry over into the game as well. But I mean, if you want to go in line with the slot receiver stuff, I mean, Amari Rodgers is another one. Much like Shi Smith is a guy, you're going to be able to go in and be like, all right, be wide receiver 3 or 4 for us right now and continue to win in the slot. I mean, his hands are outstanding. Caught everything this week. And I think you can ask him to do a lot of things in terms of where he can run routes over the middle of the field. I think you could ask him even to win deep. I know he doesn't have that long speed that necessarily of the Waddles, the Rondale Moores, all these guys. But the guy just goes out and competes hard, finishes every play, and as a guy you're going to want, even probably you could trust him as a gunner on special teams. I think the guy just wants to be out there and competing every second of the day.
I think that the Steelers actually make a lot of sense for Amari Rodgers. I was hoping one of you two would bring him up. If you didn't, I was going to, because with the potential and probable loss of Juju Smith-Schuster in Pittsburgh, they're probably going to be looking for another guy. I mean, wide receivers are always good to talk about because you got to be at least 3 deep, and most teams got to be 4 deep at that position. So I think that with the loss of Juju Smith-Schuster, Steelers are definitely going to be at some point looking to add a receiver. I guess the only question is in what round do they do it? We know how good they are at drafting the receiver at the receiver position. Amari Rodgers has been a guy that people are talking about a lot for the Steelers. Another guy that wins very similar to the way that Juju does in the slot. So I think that I'm not going to say it'd be a seamless fix, to plug in Amari Rodgers for Juju there, but I see the reason that people are saying that he could replace him in that spot.
I think it will be seamless because any wide receiver the Steelers picks turns into gold. So I mean, whatever they do, it'll work out perfectly for them.
Real quick, and we might have already, kind of touched on this as we've gone through some of the positions, but I do want to talk about guys in general, if we haven't brought them up yet, that, you guys thought won or lost the week. So wherever you want to start.
Absolutely. I think one of the guys who really won the week that we haven't talked about is David Moore. the Grambling guard,
Mm.
at 6'1" and 5/8", 350 with a almost 7-foot wingspan. He's a very odd build, but he's got quick feet. Once he engages, he's got the power and he's got the technique to be able to take you down. And he had a rep against Basham where Carlos Basham just decided, hey, I'm going to do a spin move. And then Moore just like, nope, you ain't moving. And then he just got real chippy with him. And I'm like, oh, I like this guy. And then kind of on the flip side, I know it was mentioned earlier, Deontay Brown. There was a play in the actual game where he was moving like Golem, the Pokemon, just a big
dude.
And
So bad.
I think he needs to lose a good 20 pounds. He needs to become an athlete because if he just stands there and somebody comes right at him, he can block him. And he does a really good job at it. But he's immobile. He can't move. And at this point, the only team that makes any sense for him is the Baltimore Ravens because he can just stand there. Hey, I'm just going to push you away. Like it's really hard to see him as draftable at this point until he
I know it's crazy because I saw people saying like, hey, I don't even have him with a draftable grade right now. And I'm like until you go back and watch what this week looked like for him, then really like go back and watch tape and look at how immobile he is. Like he's not going to be a pulling guard. He can't get to the next level. Like what does this guy do actually on a football field besides just take up space and be big? And that's just the way he's naturally built. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't see how he is successful at the next level without dropping some weight. And it's not like he's just going to be able to do it like this. So I don't know. But okay, Jake, so, who do you think were some other winners and losers?
I mean, I think when it came to corners, and I think you saw more of a weaker corner class, I think in general down there. I think the receivers had their way all week, obviously. But I think we got to mention Ifeatu Melifonwu, who I think has a real chance to be a lot better than his brother was coming out. I think as long as you define a position for him, I think that was the struggle with Melifonwu, who's all athlete. And Obi, I should say, he's all athlete, and they didn't know where to play him. But I think Ifeatu looks good at corner. I think when you asked him, he struggled a little bit in press man, but a lot of people like him there, obviously, with his size. I mean, 6'2" and 5'8", 212, that 80-inch wingspan is incredible. Obviously, really physical. But the way he closed again in off man, I thought was really impressive. And so seeing that and combining with what you've seen on tape with him in press man, I think you look at a complete corner where you'll have teams like maybe even Seattle who will be like, yes, I like these big, tall, long corners. Got to get them in-house. And there are other teams, obviously, on the list who are going to look for corners in this class who are going to see, this doesn't look very deep after, Surtain, Farley, maybe J.C. Horn for a lot of us in the draft community. Who's the next guy, or is it deep enough where we can even wait on guys? Are we going to jump on Melifonwu early in the draft?
Yeah, I think he's kind of like right there, like Tyson Campbell's out of Georgia's getting a lot of hype too.
Yep.
But
Eric Stokes.
Yeah, Eric Stokes. Melifonwu, I think, I don't know if it was one of the guys with the Draft Network. For some reason, I'm thinking it was Ben Solak, had him in a mock going at 55 to the Steelers. And, you don't think about corner right away for the Steelers, but like Joe Hayden's not getting any younger. And Cam Sutton and Mike Hilton, both free agents this year. Are they going to be able to bring back both? Probably not. I mean, they're going to, again, that's probably a position they're going to address. The question is at what point in the draft? So, again, Steelers fans, you should probably get familiar with this corner class. And that's a great, start, Melifonwu. So, and then as far as like losers go, is there somebody at corner as well, or are you looking at a different position?
I was looking more different position. I think, not to really harp on these Alabama guys, but I think Alex Leatherwood had a lot of hype, obviously, from the season. Even me, I was certainly talking about, I think, for the Packers and Colts, I was like, this is a guy maybe to watch potentially in the first, probably the second, more as a guy to like, this is the versatility thing, as I was talking about earlier with Radens when we talked about, offensive lineman is, he's played guard, he's played tackle, obviously, and you feel like you can trust him at either spot. I don't know. I think the pass sets looked a little slow. I think he looked a little sluggish out there against guys. You saw people push him back a little bit in the one-on-ones, and that's a little concerning, obviously, for tackle. I mean, I think there's no problem putting him in at guard, but where are you going to value that in terms of the draft? And like
that was what I was going to ask you guys. If how do you see the transition for Leatherwood going? Is he a tackle at the next level?
No, he is not a tackle at the next level. He can't move in short areas. And when you can't move in short areas,
on Twitter for saying this, by the way, because
you did. I saw that day one. You were like, Leatherwood, ain't it? Or something like that.
I just-
It was
I just
very
said-
short and sweet.
I just
Oh,
said,
and-
yeah,
and
Leatherwood
play
the guard
tackle.
to the next level.
Yeah.
Watch Alabama versus Georgia. First play, Leatherwood gets burned by Ojolari, and that's when I knew. I'm like, maybe this guy's a guard. Talk to some of the guys that I really respect, and I asked him, like, hey, what are you seeing with Leatherwood that makes you think guard? And the thing that came right out was cannot move quickly in short areas. And I'm like, okay. So I went in with that lens, and it's just blatant. And he has length, he has size, but I think you need to move him into guard. And I think that's going to knock him completely off the round one board, because I don't know if you guys know this, but guards don't matter.
I think is that in your bio?
Yes.
I thought it was.
Nice.
If you have great tackles and a really good center, it doesn't matter who your guards are. Just have them replacement level.
So not to switch the subject completely, but I remember like one of the first things we brought up, Jake brought up, was with the Colts, that offensive line, Quentin Nelson. So Tyler, do you think that they would benefit more by him playing left tackle?
I don't think they should play him at left tackle, because they're going to have to pay left tackle money.
Mm.
Keep him at guard, and I think he's going to make more of an impact with how good he is, because he's the exception to the rule. He is probably you could maybe argue Zach Martin's better, but I would take Quentin Nelson, and I think he's the best guard in the NFL. Like, he is to today's game what Larry Allen was in the 90s for the Cowboys. Like, he's that kind of transitional player at the position. Keep him there. He can help a new left tackle. He can help your center, and Ryan Kelly's a really good player. Keep him at guard. Yep. Keep that offensive line fortified, and I wouldn't play him at left tackle. Can he? I think he can. Should you? No. Get Darrisaw or Cosme or Eichenberg in round one. Stick him there and call it a day.
Somebody that I was hoping would get brought up but hasn't yet. And granted, I probably could have picked off Jamie Newman last week, but I really liked what I saw from Richie Grant out of Central Florida.
Richie Grant was fantastic. He showed incredible range and instincts, very fluid hips, and he balled out. He picked off, I think, multiple passes during practice, and I think he got one in the game too. And the guy went from—
I'll be honest, I didn't watch the actual game, so
yeah, the game was actually pretty good. He went from being like a day 3 guy to potentially being a high 2. Like, just kind of how people are viewing him. And then you obviously, once you see things at the Senior Bowl, you go into the film with a different lens, and you're trying to see kind of what you saw in Mobile. So I think Grant's got all the potential in the world. He can play single high. And if you can play single high, that makes you more valuable than other safeties, because that's a skill not everybody has.
Right. Absolutely. Jake, anything on Richie Grant?
I think Tyler nailed it, really. As far as Richie Grant, I think when you look at the class as a whole, though, as well, where you look at a lot of guys who are pigeonholed as far as where they need to play, and you look at, I think, Grant and Moehrig as the top 2 guys you can trust single high. I mean, it's hard not to think Grant's stock jumps immensely after this. Because like I said, I mean, you can look at the Javon Hollins, who I feel like is a slot guy. Nasir Dean looks like, a box type of tight end eraser type player. No doubt he looked great against tight ends in practice.
He's not a true slot.
He's not, yeah. And so you can't ask, because you looked at Amari Rodgers and Tony. They asked him to do this. Yeah. It was not good, and you can tell. So he looks like this guy you may have to mold into a linebacker almost in these sub packages and find a way for him to get on the field, because like we said, it's a lot of pigeonholing with a lot of these guys. And so when you have a guy you can trust to go, listen, we trust you single high, we trust your range, we trust your ability to read the quarterback, like Grant. I think the value is immense there for teams looking for safeties. I mean, it's pretty slim pickings this year. So I think Grant stock obviously gets major boost.
I'm mad that I didn't mention this player already, because I had one last question. It was just going to be like, who would you be pounding on the table for that from Senior Bowl week for your team, and who would you not want your team to touch from Senior Bowl week for your team? But I completely forgot about a running back, if you want to call him that, Demetric Felton out of UCLA, who was lining up at slot pretty much all week. What do you see his role being in the NFL? I mean, I've seen some Nyheim Hines comparison, J.D. McKissick, guys like that. But what do you see him doing in the NFL, and where would you value what he does?
Do you remember the old Ole Miss player from about a decade ago, Dexter McCluster?
Yes.
Dexter McCluster just
And the
used
City Chiefs.
everywhere.
Yeah.
That's Demetric Felton. I think he's going to be a faster Dexter McCluster. You're going to want to use him everywhere. Use him as a weapon. Don't give him a pigeonhole position. Get the ball in his hands. Let him do things. Percy Harvin's a great example of that as well. Like Antonio Gibson was a receiver running back hybrid. Look what he did for Washington this past year. Like, just get guys like this the ball in their hands, let them do things, and scheme plays for them. And I think you get Felton round 3, round 4, you're going to be able to get an impact player day 1 because of all the tools that they have in the box.
Jake?
Yeah, I think those are great examples too. And I even think you could look at how the Niners have used Deebo Samuel a lot in his time. Obviously, you can trust Deebo a little bit more as a receiver, and I think a lot of us would say that. But I think you look at the role he's carved out in San Francisco, and you could say, yeah, I think Felton could do that. I think that's definitely, as Smitty, you were talking about pounding the table for some guys. I think Green Bay in round 3 or 4, I mean, that it seems like a position they could use. Obviously, they're looking for a lightning to the thunder that is A.J. Dillon, apparently. Now for the Packers, they're going to lose 2 running backs, probably to free agency. So you look at a guy like that who can do multiple things for you, and LaFleur loves that type of player. I mean, they've tried it with Tavon Austin. They've tried it with a guy like Tyler Ervin. They love those type of plays. They don't do it very often, but it's in the playbook. And so a guy like Felton could make a lot of difference to make an offense more dynamic, more versatile, and more explosive.
I sure hope that doesn't
happen.
Okay, so
that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, last thing then. Who was a guy from Senior Bowl week that you'd be pounding the table for your team to take, and who's a guy that you would say, if you could have a direct line, Minnesota Vikings, do not touch this guy, who would it be?
I'd say pound the table. Look, it's Dwayne Eskridge. I love this guy.
Shocker.
I know it's breaking news.
No.
I'm still hoping that Jalen Waddle somehow the NFL doesn't like his ankle injury and he falls to 14 and they just get another stud receiver. It's not going to happen. But Dwayne Eskridge is the next best thing. He's not going to make it probably until 70. If he does, snatch him up, please and thank you. One guy I would pound the table to not take, it's probably Alaric Jackson out of Iowa. I really liked him coming into this process, and he was the reason why Tristan Wirfs didn't play left tackle at Iowa. Iowa players don't bust. He looked Deontay Brown bad at times last year. I saw people pegging him as a winner. I'm like, I don't know what you were seeing. He was getting beat with speed. He was getting beat with power, inside, outside. And I think he's going to be a guard at the next level. And if you're getting beat like that on inside pass rushes, I'm out.
Okay. Jake?
Well, other than Eskridge, who I think would be amazing in Green Bay, no doubt about it. I would definitely pound the table for Levi and Wuzurike from Washington for Green Bay. I think that's a guy that, we've seen the Packers struggle against the run. We've seen them struggle a little bit to get after the quarterback this year, too, a little bit. I think when you look at the Smiths, I think Gary was the most effective pass rusher at the end of the year. To have another guy in the interior next to Kenny Clark, like on Wuzurike, who can push the pocket. He's quick. He's strong. You saw him go up against Creed Humphrey day 1 in practices. He gave Humphrey all he could handle. And I think Humphrey maybe was a little bit happy that Wuzurike didn't practice the rest of the week, because Humphrey showed out after that, clearly. And he clearly is a good prospect. But on Wuzurike, should be on defensive tackle 1 potential for this class.
There are rumors floating around Mobile that there is talk of him going first round.
Green Bay, baby. Put him next to Kenny Clark. I love that. That would be a lot.
Who did you not like? Who would you not want Green Bay to touch?
Who would I not want Green Bay to touch? I mean, it's hard not to think both the Alabama guys after what we've seen from them, but I definitely want to go a little bit different direction. Oh yeah, Green Bay. Don't take like a random linebacker, like Tuff Borland late in the game. If you're gonna go linebacker, I'm trying to think of one that I'm really do not want in the building. And it's
like, even if it's like a good player, but you're just like, this guy is not a fit in Green Bay.
Man, I would say like one of the bigger, like the Josh Palmers and Des Fitzpatricks of the receiver class, just because I think Green Bay needs to add a more dynamic player. I don't think they need to add like a guy like that who's, obviously Palmer caught everything and made plays, and Fitzpatrick, same thing. You can separate underneath. but the Packers just need more explosiveness, period.
Yeah.
And it's not that those guys, again, like I said, can't be productive players, but if they're going to add a wide receiver, be explosive. Give me a Marquez Stevenson. Give me a Felton. Give me, even a Rodgers in the slot. Give me Eskers. Give me somebody like that instead.
I'm glad that you mentioned Creed Humphrey, and Tyler actually just mentioned him in the YouTube comments as well. But you guys, I've seen a little bit about this. Do you guys have any concerns about the fact that he snaps the ball with his left hand?
I don't give a shit.
He looks great. He's a great player.
It's going to be like that left-handed or left-footed punter thing. You get your returners used to fielding left-footed punt. It's no big deal. You get your quarterback used to, they're probably going to have to work a little extra in training camp because it's going to be a little bit different. But once you get there,
unless he ends up in Miami.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Perfect. Just send it to Miami round 2.
There you go.
Perfect.
For me, yeah, I'm operating under the assumption that we lose Juju Smith-Schuster. So I'm going back to the well with what I already kind of said with Amari Rodgers. I do think that he would be a very good fit for the Steelers, taking over that role. And a guy that I don't want to touch, it's pretty simple. It's just the fact that I don't want them to take a quarterback from this draft class, assuming that they don't trade up in round 1. And with how many holes they have, I wouldn't do it right now. I'm under the mindset, let's build a football team that is the best possible scenario for the next guy after Ben. Let's not get the guy for Ben to replace Ben right now.
Congratulations, you're a Vikings fan now.
I don't want them to touch Mac Jones right now.
That's been the Vikings' philosophy for 30 years.
Yeah.
Build a team, plug in a quarterback.
Yeah. It's a weird spot for me because, the quarterback my entire life has been Ben. So, I'm not used to this. I don't know what this transition period's about to be like. So, but I do not want them to take a quarterback. So I guess it's an easy answer for me. Just don't take Mac Jones at 24.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't blame me.
Fair. I think that's really fair. Listen, at least you didn't trade up for one for last year, when you had Rodgers. So, you can take Dallas as a Steeler fan,
I remember, do you follow Pat McAfee at all? Like his show? Ty Schmidt, who's on there, who's a Packers fan, his reaction, man, legendary. I went back and watched that entire show.
It was.
They're actually, that show, the Pat McAfee's draft special last year, is the reason that we're doing a draft show this year.
There you go.
Jake, I don't know if you're going to be doing one again, but you're going to have some competition this year, pal.
Sounds good.
Unless we want to all incorporate it together. I don't know. Maybe we should do that.
We can chat.
We're all good friends.
Yeah.
There you go.
But no, I can't thank you guys enough for joining in on this. I'm upset that we weren't able to link up together in person this year in Mobile, but I guess this is kind of the 2020, early 2021 version of doing so, just getting together on a screen.
Yeah. Don't worry, next year will be
already in 2022. The stadium looks great also.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to talk real quick. Man, the upgrade they did looks phenomenal. Can't wait for 2022.
I can't say enough things about what Jim Nagy and company have done for that week, I would say that game, but the week in general, just unbelievable event that they've turned that into.
Yeah.
So I just want to go back to Winslow's. Give me some oysters.
Oh man.
All right, but yeah, thanks again to you guys for joining the show and giving us your insight. Of course, follow them on Twitter, as you guys can see at the bottom of the ticker there going past. Follow their draft coverage. They're two of my favorite guys in the community. So thanks to you guys for joining, and thanks for everybody that's been a part of this in the comments and all that good stuff. And we will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.